Hello and welcome to my woolly PhD. My name is Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm currently learning and making in my anthropology PhD all about wool. So I'm back in Iceland, if you couldn't tell. It's my fourth day back and I'm nearly recovered from the jet lag and the little sinus infection I got on the plane, these long haul flights. So full of germs. Anyway, it's so beautiful, snowy, white, and we're having the most stunning day. Apparently the weather's kind of alternating, crappy day, beautiful day. Yesterday I wouldn't call it crappy, but it was definitely lots of rain, lots of snow, all of it was horizontal. Today is just really still, there's a little bit of wind picking up, but super gorgeous. Now if you've been watching along, or even if you haven't, if you go back to episode 28, I'm standing in the same place as I was for that episode. So if you want to see the contrast between, what was that, August and now March, it was so bright green. Anyway, it's very beautiful. Okay, and yes, as an Australian with very little snow experience, I am loving it. It's very new. But this week, yes, I have missed 2 weeks of videos unintentionally. Suffice to say, the last 2 weeks of trying to kind of to get here with the impact of the war in sort of West Asia, North Africa region, the impact on flights is obviously one of the least problematic impacts, but it's been a bit hectic, so there hasn't been videos. But anyway, I'm back. And this week I am thinking about a really bad paper. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be like crying the whole time. It's so bright. I can't quite, the lighting's really bad because I can't quite face the sun. It's too bright and the cold wind is making my eyes water a lot. So bear with me, we're in the field. Anyway, I've been thinking about a really bad paper I read. And just a heads up, I will be talking sort of broadly about family violence at some point in the video. So if that's something you don't want to be thinking about today, don't keep watching. Now, I usually share articles and books that I thought were good because I like to be a builder, not a knocker. But academia really lives or dies on its capacity for robust debate and critique. So this very bad paper, which is not a very good critique yet, but it's called Creativity and Innovation in Iceland. Individual, environmental and cultural variables. It sounds great, right? I thought it was going to be awesome. Anyways, this is by Kerr et al., published in 2017 in the journal called Gifted and Talented International. Now, plenty of problematic papers are submitted to journals and often rejected. So in some ways, the criticism really needs to be directed to the journal gatekeepers, so the peer reviewers and the editors who sort of led this one through, published it. Now, it's not a highly ranked journal. It's like a Q3 ranked journal, if that means anything to you. But and it can be a thing where lower ranked journals will kind of have lower standards of letting things through. But still, I think sometimes when I get really excited by the title of a paper and then it's quite disappointing, I'm even more like, this is wrong with it, that's wrong with it, this is wrong. Anyways, there are so many things, so many problems with this paper that we would be here all day if I went through all the ones that I took issue with. It's so cold on the ears. So I won't go through them all. I will just focus on the first note that I made about this paper in my reading notes, which was, this is a propaganda piece. Dramatic, I know, but sometimes I get irritated when taking notes. Anyway, the article really is a great example about how academics participate in and benefit from perpetuating false narratives about Iceland. So it's not just tourism operators and governments who benefit and participate in this kind of thing. Academics do as well. And not just about Iceland, of course, it's everywhere, but Iceland is a particularly striking example, and it is my field site, so of course that's what I'm going to talk about. Now, they say in the abstract that the article seeks to answer the question, why is Iceland so innovative? They don't actually critique the question or validate the assumption at all. So this is my first issue, right? They also don't really explore innovation at all. They mostly just explore the idea of creativity, but they don't even define the term. And then later in the introduction, they say they're exploring the question of why is Iceland so creative. So they kind of conflate creativity with innovation, which is a massive problem as well. Oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness, it just goes on really. So they also, this is a little one, right? But there's just lots of things in here that are grossly inaccurate, right? So they perpetuate a commonly misreported statistic, right? That 1 in 10 Icelanders publish a book, right? This is used as evidence to the creativity of Icelanders. Again, just because you publish a book doesn't mean it's a work of creativity actually, but it's also not accurate. So the original research that has often been turned into 1 in 10 publish a book is actually that 1 in 10 Icelanders will have some writing published, which can include a letter to the editor or something in your school newsletter. It's a far cry from publishing a book, right? So anyway, they include this. But the thing that I take the most umbrage with is this statement about Iceland. No violence is allowed towards spouses, and any form of aggression towards children, such as spanking, is strictly forbidden. What a utopia Iceland is. No family violence. Well, let me tell you about this idea called the Nordic paradox. It is a concept coined in 2016 to describe a contradiction seen across the Scandinavian countries, so Iceland, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, that these countries consistently rank in the world's highest in terms of gender equality, right? So women have high workforce participation, strong legal protections, great parental leave, robust political representation, high levels of higher education completion, etc. So doing really well on structural equality, but they also report the highest levels of intimate partner and gender-based violence against women in Europe. So this is the notion of the paradox. Why is it so? Seems like it should be quite answerable, but not so confusing. But of course, not surprisingly, there's not actually a huge amount of research that's been done about it. There are a couple of theories that explain the data that sort of prompted the concept, and of course they also, the data-based explanations or data-oriented explanations essentially say the paradox doesn't exist. So one of them is just reporting. One of the most widely sort of cited explanation is that there's the greater gender equality raises women's awareness of their rights and lowers their tolerance for abuse and raises their awareness of what abuse is. So women in Nordic countries are more likely to recognise and report violence because they've got better legal literacy, stronger institutional trust, they have less stigma around disclosure. And then in less equal societies, many women may not label coercive or violent experiences as abuse at all. So that's one explanation, which would kind of say there is no paradox. Also another one is, oh God. I think it was this cold last time I was out of the house. I was doing vigorous physical activity and it felt quite warm. Standing still, it's quite cold. The other one, right? Survey methodology differences. So this idea that the surveys in the Nordic countries are more rigorous, more sophisticated on sensitive topics, but that also respondents might be more willing to answer more honestly. That countries with less sort of open civil cultures might systematically underreport in surveys. Therefore, so the data looks like the prevalence is higher in these Nordic countries, whereas it might just be that their surveys work better for various reasons. So again, that would kind of say there is no paradox. This is just a methodological data distortion. But there is one sociocultural oriented explanation which is interesting, which is a backlash hypothesis really, that says that sort of these rapid advances in women's autonomy and economic independence provokes a backlash among men whose sense of identity or dominance sort of feels threatened. But in this view, sort of equality, so the structural gains in equality outpaces shifts in attitudes and behaviours. And men, responding to a loss of or perceived loss of status with violence. That's interesting too. But again, The statement that there's no violence towards spouses is just so wildly inaccurate. And I cannot even begin to understand why or how this got through kind of gatekeepers on this article. I did say I'd try to limit my critiques, but there's just one other that really bugged me. They publish a quote from an interviewee referencing Iceland's advantages as a social democracy, right? Never underestimate what knowing you will always have food, shelter, childcare and education will do for your creativity. It makes it sound like there is no poverty or homelessness in Iceland, which, shock, is not true. It is quite low though, which is great, but not everyone in Iceland always has food, shelter, childcare and education, or as much of it as they need or would like for creative pursuits, right? Now, it is fine to quote interviewees who are saying factually incorrect things, as long as you're exploring the quote in the context of its incorrectness. But this isn't what happened here. This quote was the final statement of the whole paper, used as if it was true. So this kind of portrayal of this utopian society, which leads to this abundance of creativity, so bonkers. So why would academics do such shoddy work, right? And perpetuate such inaccurate or unsophisticated kind of narratives, right? So, because we first have to say that academic knowledge production, it's not immune to the same sort of incentive distortions that affect other institutions. Academic work is incentivized in a range of different ways. So academic success is significantly based on publication and grants, both of which reward novelty and a good narrative. And exoticization, it's still rewarded in academia. So the exoticization of Iceland benefits, academics who say, oh, let's research in Iceland because they have this story or that story, and that's, Iceland's, as I mentioned in this article, Iceland's having a moment at the, it is kind of popular. Another one is confirmation bias, right? They didn't want to question the narrative that Icelanders are more creative because they sought to explain it. So they had to keep making assumptions and statements that supported that if they'd critiqued those assumptions or statements, it may have changed the nature of the work too much, and they would have gone, oh, we can't actually support this statement. I guess the other part of it too, right, is these sort of culturally legible shorthand. They get attached to a real but complex phenomenon, and they persist because they're used to useful organising concept, but not necessarily because they're accurate when you sort of dig in to the narrative a bit. But the narrative becomes sort of like a load-bearing infrastructure, right, for an entire subfield, or and just sort of dismantling it or critiquing it affects more than just your own paper. It can affect a whole bunch of work that other people have done, and that can, potentially make you unpopular, or, a whole range of reasons why academics would participate in perpetuating these kinds of narratives. I think the cold is now starting to freeze my brain. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about this week, and having some very razzed up thoughts because the paper really irritated me, actually. Anyway, what have I been making this week? Despite the slightly challenging conditions, I have brought my knitting out to show you. So before I left Melbourne, I did finish the mohair shawl scarfing that I was working on for my daughter. It's now snugly around her neck back in Melbourne. So I can't show you that. I will put it on Instagram, but I just haven't yet because I'm a bit behind documenting. I did nothing like many long haul flights to get lots of serious knitting hours in. I finished these stripy socks. I did the stripes different because I wanted to, but these are lovely. I've started wearing them. I haven't sewn the ends in or blocked them yet, but sometimes that's just how I roll. So that's the socks done, and I got a lot done I hope you can hear that. Just above me now is the most amazing V formation of geese. There's been quite a few over the past few days of geese coming back from wherever they went for winter. They're mixed popularity here. They cause a lot of problems damaging fields, but they're also protected. Or protected for part of the year. Yeah, I think you can't shoot them when they're just coming back from migrating because they're tired. It's not a fair fight, maybe, but you can later. Anyway, they're pretty cool. I have made a lot of progress on this cardigan. I think I knitted most of this body and a little bit of the sleeve on the plane. So at the moment I paused on the body and I'm continuing on the sleeve. I think I've got another couple of inches here to do before I start. Oh Jesus, it's cold on my hands. Before I start the ribbing. I'm loving this. I think it's going to be a little bit too small. Not so small that I can't wear it, but I might not be able to do the buttons up. Anyway, I'm going to see what I can do with the button band. I might get a bit of extra inches added on to that and some aggressive blocking. I love that term, aggressive blocking. It's just hilarious. Imagine knitters aggressively blocking their knits. Okay. Oh, I'm going to put my hands back in my pockets. It's so cold. I think that's it for this week. No, that was it. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. And I think next week I'm going to record the video in a barn with some sheep or something because this is really cold.